Greetings, this is Artie from Artifact Electronics. Today we're going to have a look at this server technology Sentry Power Tower, which I've had sitting around for a while, using it as a doorstop, but I hadn't even powered it on. So I thought let's share this with the community and see what this thing does. But first, small story that almost prevented me from doing this teardown or checkout today. It seemed as if today the electronic artifact universe was getting ready. No, it wasn't getting ready, but was ready to conspire against me. So I got up in the morning and I'm working on a piece of hardware I'm designing that I worked on pretty late last night, and thought it would be a good thing to plug it in the morning. And this thing is powered off, it's a board, it's powered off a donor from a Nintendo Wii, which makes a damn good 12 volt DC supply at 3.3 amps. So I plug this thing in, the board powers up, my computer UPS emits a weak beep and proceeds to cut power to the computer. Now, it's probably a weak battery in the UPS or whatever, but my development machine still runs Windows 7. And the reason for that is I got it set up just right, and it's a huge hassle to get a lot of those licenses transferred to another computer. I mean, it's expensive. Everybody wants me to upgrade to the latest and this and that, but it works fine on that computer, so it's still running Windows 7. Windows 7 really doesn't like it when you remove power from a running machine. So it's not the end of the world, but I guess some of the stuff gets cached, and by the time the machine came back up, it took almost 15 minutes, and it wasn't even doing anything. It wasn't scanning the drive, it wasn't uploading to Google backup, nothing. You looked at Task Manager, and it just sat there with zeros, with 0% utilization of all of the tasks in there. Anyway, patience kind of paid off. I waited for a while, and finally everything came back again. And I tested my board, I talked to it from the computer, and everything was hunky-dory, so great. We got the ugly stuff out of the way for today. Or so I thought. A little while later, I'm getting on a video conference, and a few minutes into the conference, the software throws me off. Boom, I'm gone. Fine, I log back in, get back online again, ask, hey, what happened here? And people just tell me, hey, you just disappeared. All right, fine. Shit happens. We go on. A few minutes later, the same thing repeats itself again. By this time, people are laughing at me and my internet connection, but fine. Let the software get it out of its system and everything will be fine. So next, it's my turn to talk. And I'm giving my spiel, and the damn thing throws me off again. So I get back on again, and by this time everybody's really amused, but the most amused guy said, hey guys, you know what just happened to me? I just figured out that every time I unmute my microphone, Artie gets thrown off the video conference. Of course, everybody thought that was tremendously funny, but the conspiracy was following me, even though it did let me complete my spiel and complete that part of the conspiracy. So now we hit number 3 after the video conference. I'm getting ready to run my lunch errands. I get in my SUV, open the garage door, put it into reverse, and the rear hatch, which is motor driven, opens up just on its own. I mean, the button is in the door. I wasn't even close to that button. So I hit the button to close it again, and it won't close. No peep, no nothing. It just sits there. I get out, I go back there, and I hit the button on the hatch to close it. Nothing. So finally I slam it shut manually, but now I can bring the hatch down, but it won't latch. Probably the latch was closed or whatever, but I couldn't release the latch, so I couldn't close this thing. And by this time, the conspiracy actually got to me. And I said, okay, to hell with this. I'm going to go inside and I'm going to get a book and read for the rest of the day and just blow off the rest of the day. But that feeling lasted about 5 minutes. And I wasn't going to let the universe beat me. I go out to the car and I see that the latch has opened itself, raised itself again. So I go to it, I hit the button on the rear latch, and it proceeds to close and latch, and everything's fine. So those were my 3 incidences of the conspiracy against me. They all got solved. But I was getting ready to just blow off the day. But hey, I actually went out, I did my errands, everything went fine. And then when I came back, I had a minor one because I was using this as a doorstop, and I almost stumbled over it and broke my neck. But that was definitely a message from a higher power telling me to do something with this. And that's, after all this babbling, this is what we shall get to now. Okay, so the one thing I didn't expect was I went to the server technology website and I actually found a manual for this. Now they changed the model number or model name on it, that's why it took me a while to find it, but I guess it's still a current product. It looks a little different, and obviously I guess when these come from the factory with a whole bunch of accessories like for a secure power connection and all sorts of things, which of course I didn't get. But hey, what do you want for $5, right? So what it is it's a, well, they call it a power management system for servers. But if we have a look at the back, which is a lot more exciting than the front. So what we have here is 16 outlets, AC outlets, that I guess you can turn on and off remotely. Well, you can only turn them on and off remotely because there were no buttons in front and there's no buttons in the back. You cannot operate this from the unit itself. It can only be operated remotely. It's got a serial connection and an Ethernet connection and an input current monitor over here that I guess gives you the cumulative current that all 16 outlets are using. So let's see, let's give it power and see if it does anything. Well, it kind of blinks a little bit and tells us that our input current is dash dash. Nothing's up here. Oh, let me plug it into my network. Hear those clicks? It is sequentially enabling every one of these outlets. So it's power sequencing this thing. I should probably plug my pinball machines into this, and that way once this thing gets power, the machines will light up at 2-second intervals, which should be kind of neat. Are the outlets actually working? Well, that's probably not a bad test to do here. So let me unplug my lamp over here and use that as an outlet tester. So my assumption is with all the relays clicking, all of these outlets are enabled now. It's polarized. Yep. Yeah, it works. And we are using 0.5 amps right now. So it seems to work. I mean, we got to see, of course, if we can talk to this. And I got the manual. It gave me the default IP for it that it comes with from the factory. And I went to the default IP and nothing happened. I couldn't connect. So I'm guessing that the default IP has been changed. But the manual didn't mention that there is a reset knob, a reset button in here that, if held for 15 seconds, will completely wipe out everything and turn it back to factory defaults. And then it should go back to the IP mentioned in the manual. But then underneath it, in bold italics, it says, unless the reset button has been disabled through software. So obviously, let's go and find that reset button and see if we can reset this thing. Because if the reset button has been disabled, and it's obviously 15 seconds, it's a soft reset button, well, then this will go right back to being a doorstop because there's no way I can get in. But let's take some of the screws out and see what awaits us inside. Okay, so I removed a bunch of screws, and there was one security screw which I can't find right now. I don't know what that screw is called. If I find it, I can show you. Oh, there you go. Can you see that? It's got a nub. Anyway, I used my Harbor Freight security bit set, looks like this, which made short order of removing that screw in one piece without stripping it. By the way, for you non-US residents, Harbor Freight is a US source for really, really cheap tools, and they are hit and miss. I mean, some of the tools will fall apart while they're still, the minute you take them out of the box, and others will do their service really well. They're all cheap, and they got a really good return policy. So whenever, I need something that doesn't necessarily have to be high quality, I get it from there. And if I get burned, I take it back, get my money back, and pay 4 times as much and buy the real thing. Anyway, so with the screws removed, let's get a better look at this. So, yeah, surprise, surprise. Let's see. So what we can see here is 2 sets, actually 4 sets of boards. The boards are identical. There's 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, and they got relays on them. And yeah, that's about it. They have opto-isolators here to drive them probably off of a logic line. Everything's fused. I would open it up to show you the board underneath, but the problem is the way this is assembled is the AC outlets are all plugged in from the back, and then there's like a carrier board type thing that is actually soldered onto all of the AC connections over here, and then that connects to this board. And it would be a humongous pain in the ass to get this board out in case it needs a repair. But it looked well. I didn't test every outlet, but my random sampling, I think, was good enough to show us that this thing probably works correctly. And then after that, the only interesting thing in there is probably the main board, the main processor board, which is this. And there's small processors on each of the relay boards, but I'm thinking that those are those are just relay, just I/O processors that get a signal from here. And this board probably has a processor, has the main processor mounted underneath. It's probably your garden variety processor that runs Linux, because as we shall later see, is when you connect to this thing, it basically looks like you connect it to your new router or something. The screen layouts and stuff like that look exactly the same. So again, I'm not going to attempt to take this thing out, but all of the outside connections are terminated here or end up here, and so that's the processor board. And the only way to see if that works correctly would be to actually get on a computer and see if we can hook up. Now you can hook up via HTML to this, and the way you do that is, I guess you just go in and type in the IP address, and it should connect. But we'll find that out soon. Other than that, there really isn't a whole lot else inside. It's got this distribution board over there that lots of things plug in and plug out from. A minuscule transformer down there, of which I guess that is only used to supply power to the CPUs in here, because it doesn't really manage the power. It's a binary power manager. It either turns the outlets on or off. And I think that's about all I can say about this. There's really nothing else interesting in here. But yeah, this is probably one of the early IoT devices, even though they didn't call them that when this came out. My guess is, since it has a serial port on it, the serial port down here, I would guess that this thing is probably around 12 to 15 years old. And the IoT was not yet used commonly to describe these kinds of things, but this is what this is. You can, if you open up your gateway at home, you can basically get to this from anywhere in the world, with a computer of course, and wreak havoc on your electrical connections. But let's go ahead and hook this up, go over to the computer and see if the computer can actually talk to this. Remember I said I need to reset this? It's kind of interesting because I found a reset button over here. But that's a decoy. Well, it's not really a decoy. I think this is an actual hardware reset button, because if you press that, not for 15 seconds, but it seems to cycle the unit. Or maybe not. I don't know, maybe I have to press it longer. But after playing around with that thing for a while, I had another look at the manual, and it's not really a decoy, but read the damn manual, and you'll find that the real reset button, the one that they are referring to, is mounted underneath the board at this location. So what you got to do is, there's a hole next to the power to the ammeter, and you have to stick a paper clip through that and hold the button, hold it in for 15 seconds, and after 15 seconds everything gets reset to factory defaults. And once I gave up on this button and I did it the way the manual told me to, everything, well, it looked like it reset, but again, we won't find that out till a little bit later. But before going over to the other room, I figured it's probably not a bad idea to check all of the outlets real quickly, if the relays are good. So in order to do that, I'm not going to plug the lamp in, but I'm going to be a little bit more high-tech. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to use an electrician's tool, a voltage detector, the Greenlee GT11 voltage detector. And the way this thing works is you plug it into the hot leg. You plug it into the neutral, it doesn't do anything. Okay, that seems to indicate that they're all working. One thing, this gives you a really good piece of advice, and that is test on live circuit before use. It's a very good idea, yeah, because if this thing doesn't work, you might be lulled into a false sense of security and stick your fingers in there. But yeah, you should use an outlet that you know works, that something on it worked. Like we go back here, I'm sticking it into one of my wall outlets where the kilowatt is showing me 120 volts coming out of. So that completes the pre-use test of this thing, and this seems to think that all of the outlets are live. Okay. And actually I almost didn't notice this, but there are LEDs for each outlet that light up when the outlet is live. But I can't really see anything, so let me turn the lights that's shining on it off. And I still, well, you can kind of see that these are on over here, but it's piss poor. You can barely see what's going on in there. And the reason for that is kind of interesting. Don't try this at home. It is live. I'm just going to try to show you if I can, but it's so dark in there. See, you can see the LEDs now. They're clearly lit up. And the way that works is, doesn't make one hell of a difference here, but the LEDs extend to here, and then, let's see if I can make that. The cable's fighting me, sorry. I win. So, all right. See, here's the LED, and it's pointing at a light pipe over here that terminates in the front panel. But if you look at this closely, the LEDs are kind of far away from the light pipe. This one especially. And if they're too far away from the light pipe, I mean, they don't work, and that's why we get that shitty performance out of them. I guess whoever soldered this board onto the outlets wasn't careful enough and left too much space here, did not slide it down far enough, and thus the LEDs are too far away from the light pipe and you can't see shit from the outside. I hope quality control's listening to me. But then again, you know, when you pay people 75 cents an hour to assemble these, this is what you end up with. Oops. Oh well. So what we do now is we enter the default IP, which I already have before. 192.168.1254, and once my username. And the manual tells you that your default username is ADMN and your default password is ADMN. And boom, we get right in. And so what you can do here is let's say they're all on. I don't have the unit in here, so you can't hear the relays clicking, but I guess you'll have to take my word for it. But we'll just tell it that on the next time we refresh, we want to turn outlet 4 off. Well, it's set off. I did hear the relay click, but I'm sure you didn't because it's in the other. It's in the workroom. But so basically it gives you this clunky way of turning things on and off. I mean, they couldn't even put buttons in here so you click on, off, or whatever. You basically cue your command here in this column, and then you say apply. And it does what it's supposed to do. Refresh it because I guess it doesn't update very quickly, and that's basically it. The other part, you know, it wouldn't be a full IoT if it didn't actually tell you something too, but you can go to the environmental monitoring and it'll tell you that it is consuming a 1/4 amp right now. Oh, it just updated, and that's about it. That's pretty much what it does. So if you want to do anything useful with this, I mean, okay, so there's a configuration in here. It tells you all sorts of good stuff, and for all of the network connections, outlets. You can set the wake up state in here. You can also set the sequential interval. Oh, it's up here actually. So we can change the interval between adjacent outlets coming on. So if we set this to 0, what will it do? You can't set it to 0, even though the manual says you can, but you can't set it to 0, and that makes perfect sense because you don't want, if you actually have something connected to all of the outlets and you have no sequencing interval, it's most likely going to blow a fuse. So okay, that's good. You can set up groups, users. The FTP is used to set it up. You tell it where the firmware upgrade is, and it goes out and looks for it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm perfectly happy with the current firmware. And initiate a system restart. That's pretty much all the tools that it gives you. So it's pretty thin. If you want to use this, you probably got to sit in there and sniff the command stream and see, you know, what the HTML stream looks like, and then write your own app and make it a little bit more useful. But anyway, so that's the way to do it via HTML. Now, you can also use Telnet, and what I'm going to do for that is use PuTTY. So we got to put, I didn't save it. So I got to go and enter the local address again. The port number, I saw that doesn't make a difference. It seems to ignore the port number. And you just tell it to go to Telnet. And there it is. You use the same username, same password, and we're in. So once you get to the Sentry prompt, you're logged in, and I'm using the instruction manual on the other screen. So it's a command line interface, and I guess, let's see, let's turn all of the outlets on. So on all. It says command successful, but it still shows the old state. Oh, pending on. Okay. So how do we show, well, let's just do on all again. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of really slow. I mean, it shows these as being on, but number 15 is still pending on. But here's your command line interface, and if you look through the manual, it lets you do all sorts of good things. But isn't there anything interesting in here? Oh, so you can get the same display by typing in status. Okay, now they're all on. The control state is on and everything is hunky-dory. So there you have it. It seems to work. Now as far as usability goes, yeah, it's got 16 switched outlets, but the existing user interface is real clunky. And this is kind of what I would prefer. Not would prefer, what I do prefer. And that is, you can get these are basically 8 switched outlets. I got this from a music store, around $30, new. Yes, I actually bought something new. And it's got a switch for each outlet in the back. So when you want to turn something on, you flip the switch, and it turns on whatever it's connected to. And that way, I have several of these things here, and I use them to control the synthesizer setup, including the mixer, power amp, everything pretty much that's in here. And those are really, really useful. But I guess I could put the power director in and hook all of my instruments, plug all my instruments into it, and put it in a strong box, and then nobody will be able to turn on my stuff unless they have my password and can log into it. So with that said, she's going to be a doorstop for the near future, but she's going to stay in the herd, and maybe one day I'll figure out what I can do with this that's really, really useful. Make good use of the comment section and let me know what you would do in it. I mean, it's I don't have a server room, and but I have lots of consumer things that I like to turn on and off. And yeah, I'm going to have to sit down and, as I said, basically figure out what the commands are and write my own app if I want to use this thing. But for now, it is doorstop time. Thanks so much for watching. Again, make sure to leave me a comment if you got anything interesting or enlightening or funny to say. Make sure you subscribe. Thumb it up if you think it is worth it. And be safe.